I've got my camera and my laptop, which I'm looking between the two things. But yeah, I'm really excited to have you all here and to hear from our wonderful panelists. I've been really looking forward to this one. So thank you everyone for coming and joining. I'm called Emma Gein. I'm from the Bristol Disability Equality Forum, where I work on our community climate action project. So for a bit of context, that's supporting 6 disadvantaged communities in Bristol to make their own climate action plans. So I'm sure, as many of you all know, that disabled people are often excluded from climate action, and if we're not thought about during this work, often it creates new barriers for us. So we've created this climate plan to try and think about how Bristol's action on climate can be good for disabled people instead of creating new barriers. And I'm happy to say that we're the first in the world, so that's quite exciting, but also kind of disappointing in many ways that, you know, it's 2002 and, you know, it's the first one. So on the other side of it, it's kind of not great in terms of the whole context, but that's why I'm extra excited to kind of think about events like this and be thinking about, you know, how can we be doing things that are good for disabled people and the planet. So our climate plan looks at everything from food to jobs, but I've got to admit we didn't look at fashion, which is in some ways a shame because fashion makes about 10% of emissions, so the gases that are kind of driving climate change. It uses a huge amount of water and makes like a lot of pollution. So there are lots of ways in which we can be thinking about, okay, how do we do this kind of work that is good for the planet? And I was also really passionate to run this event when Sustainable Fashion Week sort of said, would you have an event on fashion for disabled people? Because climate work is often quite sad, right? You know, it's talking about barriers being created for disabled people, we're talking about huge loss of lives, and just a huge amount of kind of real difficult kind of problems that are being created in our society. But fashion, you know, it can be fun, it's colourful, it's stylish, it's sexy. And I think often society doesn't think that any of those things apply to disabled people or climate activists. But as a disabled woman and a climate activist, I know that's complete nonsense. And I'm sure our panelists are going to go deeper into that further about how there's so much exciting work that's being done in this area. So just a little bit of an overview of what we are going to be covering. I'm going to go on to introduce our panelists. They're going to talk a little bit about their work. I'm going to start off with a few questions, and then there'll be a chance for people in the audience to ask questions, but also to sort of share your insights. And I think one of the things that I'm always struck by when I run these kinds of events is that there's so much like insight and wisdom and knowledge in all disabled people. So I think it'd be really great to hear everyone's experiences about sustainability, clothing, and all of that above. So I just realized I haven't actually pinned the signer. Yes, so introductions. Our wonderful panelists today are Chaimah Dewey. So Chaimah Dewey Fashion is the UK's first clothing brand for people with dwarfism/short stature. They offer stylish, timeless pieces made in eco-conscious fabrics, sourced and produced in the UK, and finished with innovative adaptive fastenings. Their mission is to disrupt the fashion industry, producing and spreading positive representations of little people to mainstream media, changing societal perceptions and showing the fashion industry that little people are just as beautiful and deserving of stylish clothing and a place in the industry. We also have Kat Paylor-Bent, who's known as the lady in the funky heels, and the wheelchair. Kat is a universal design expert, adaptive fashion designer, actor, and disabled model. Kat founded Seated Sewing in September 2019 and has gone from strength to strength, designing bespoke outfits for the disabled community. We also have Poppy Field, who is a disability communications and accessibility specialist with experience within adaptive fashion and adaptive gaming. She has a Bachelor's of Honours in Fashion Communication and Promotion and is known for creating adaptivefashion.co.uk in 2019. She is currently the social strategist and community manager at Open Style Lab, a non-profit dedicated to making style accessible for all. Open Style Lab recently finished their first New York Fashion Week show with disabled models, collaborating with disabled and non-disabled designers from OSL to create custom accessible clothing. Outside of this work, she recently announced a new podcast in collaboration with Acast, Call Me Disabled, a conversation on the disabled experience. But having said that, I will now pass to Chaimah. So if you would like to present your work. Sorry, I'm just struggling with pinning. There we go.
Yeah, do you want me to just kind of introduce myself, say a little bit about what so, oh, sorry, you carry on.
Sorry, so you sent me some images, but that's for later, right? Is that bro?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so hi everyone, my name's Chaimah. I'm the CEO and founder of Chaimah Dewey Fashion. As we mentioned earlier, it's the UK's first clothing brand for people of short stature. We previously went to London Fashion Week last weekend and had the first show showing people with dwarfism and short stature. So yeah, it's a really exciting time for us, and I'm excited to be part of the panel.
Amazing. I think this is a bit of a time if you wanted to talk about your work in any way, or you happy to kind of do that kind of thing in the questions part?
Yeah, I'm happy to just go with the flow and answer some questions later, but yeah, I think that's kind of my introduction for now.
Okay, amazing. Let's pass over to Kat.
Sorry, I was concentrating there on Chaimah. Yeah. Hi everyone, my name's Kat. I am based up in the northeast of England, and I created seated sewing because I was made disabled 15 years ago. I got a spinal injury and I couldn't find clothing that was suitable for wheelchair users. So I started making my own, and then news got out that I was doing that, and people started asking if I could create for them, and I've sort of found a little niche of creating rather colourful and funky outfits for the disabled community. From a sustainability point of view, everything that we use is dead stock, so it's fabric that would have been thrown out anyway. So it makes our clothing a little bit more bespoke, because we don't hold a huge stock of fabric. Chances are I'll be able to get a run of it and then I won't be able to get any more. So it makes the outfits a bit more special, and it means that we're throwing less things away and into landfill. So that's a little bit of seeded.
Thank you, Kat. Let's move on to Poppy.
Hi, I'm Poppy. I'm chronically ill and disabled and have been for all my life, but particularly the last decade, where I think I realized how inaccessible the world was to me. And I grew up wanting to be a fashion designer since literally the age of 4. And then slowly over time, I realized that, oh, I don't think I'm allowed to be in that industry. I'm too disabled, which obviously I've now realized is not the case. But yeah, in 2019, during my degree, I created adaptivefashion.co.uk, which was a project at the time, but then propelled me into more adaptive fashion work. And I'm very passionate about it. And then went on to be an Open Startup Fellow in Communications, where we have a program every year where we focus on a particular area of adaptive fashion. And our hat kits in particular are very important because it's empowering and giving ownership to disabled people to have the tools to then adapt their clothing and make them sustainable and give them longevity. So I'm very passionate about having accessibility within sustainability, because I fully believe that sustainability is not sustainable if it's not accessible. So yeah, that's kind of why I'm here today, just because very passionate about that one little message there. So thank you for having me. Also, I'm a blonde woman in a random wet bedroom, dark, dim bedroom, it's wet outside. And yeah, my pronouns are she, her. Thanks.
Amazing, thank you. So I will just pin all of our panelists, and then yeah, we'll leap into the questions. So I thought I'd kick off with asking, what is your favorite adaptive and sustainable outfit? So I've got a few photos that people have sent me in advance, so perhaps let's just share my screen. Let's start with Chaimah. So I'll just make sure that comes up. Is everyone seeing that? Brilliant. Chaimah, would you like to tell us about your favourite outfit? And it'd be great if these pictures could be described whilst we're showing them.
Yeah, of course. So I'll describe the picture first. So the image is of a short stature woman with dwarfism. She has really dark hair, very straight hair, and she's smiling. She's wearing a lace gown, which is blue and white, and she has some white sandals on. So this is my favourite outfit that is both sustainable and adaptive, I believe. It was the kind of showpiece for my graduate collection. I graduated from London College of Fashion in July, I believe it was, and this was kind of the showpiece of the whole collection. So the lace comes from Scotland, and it's actually where my dad's side of the family are from. So it's a place called the Irvine Valley, and it's the last standing lace mill in Scotland. So years ago, it used to be like a thriving lace community. And then when everything became kind of standardized, everything went over to Asia, everything kind of fell apart. But there's this one standing lace mill, and they make everything from cotton, and everything's really beautiful, and they kind of make things bespoke, so not so much waste. But I did get a piece of this fabric while I was up there, and again, it's kind of dead stock, so it's so rare that this makes the dress feel even more special. But yeah, it's meant to make people feel amazing, and the lady in the photo is called Kate. She's a good friend of mine, and every time she wears it, she feels amazing, and I think it brings joy to people, so that's why this is my favorite.
Amazing. I love the history behind it as well.
Yeah, it feels very personal to me, so it's nice.
Let's go on to who do we have next. I think now we've got Kat's favourite outfits. Sorry, I'm to do a little bit of shifting around with technology. Is that showing?
Yep, that's showing. So this this is a picture of me sat in my wheelchair. I have a pair of silk trousers in my hand that I am altering for Isaac Harvey, which is who I made this outfit for. If you looked very hard in the background of Chaimah's picture, you'd have seen Isaac and I in this outfit. So I got all of Isaac's outfit, I got all of his measurements, and then I make the product, whatever it is that we decide. I make it up in Durham, again out of stock that would have gone to landfill, and then I go down to London, I fit Isaac, and then it tends to be for an event that we'd both be attending anyway. So yeah, so this is just an example of me taking up some adaptive trousers, which was especially designed because if I give you a little bit of background, Isaac was born with no arms and very short legs. So we make him trousers despite the fact that his legs are really short. And we create him tops so it looks like he has got shoulders and arms, but they aren't there. And his trousers need to be adapted because he's in a wheelchair to get around. So we have to make them so they're higher at the back and lower at the front, and they just comfortable. They have to be functional. There you go. So this picture that you can see now is Isaac in his model pose. He's sat in his wheelchair. Isaac is a man of colour, black man, and he's sat with purple and pink stripy socks, and then the fabric is actually Caribbean batik, because originally his parents are from Trinidad and Tobago. So we've used it has purples and blues and greys and black, just a riot of colour. And then he wanted to be a little bougie and a little Met Gala, and he asked if we could add feathers. So the whole of his seam on his outer jacket is is trimmed in feathers, and a lot of feathers. But every part of it is adapted in some way so that it is more accessible. So in this particular one, it has Velcro, and it's got fastenings that it is easier for his mum, who is his main carer, to help him get in and out of the outfit.
Beautiful. Sorry, I disappeared for a second there. My internet crashed, but also bounced back very quickly. So that's a small blessing. Okay, now let me load up Poppy's.
Sorry, I had to cough there. I was like, your previous outfits were incredible, absolutely in awe. But this is me in front of like the garden of Buckingham Palace, and I'm wearing these sort of loose, elasticated, checkered pants. They just float so beautifully, and then a little like fanny pack, little tiny black fanny pack, and a pair of like black combat boots. And a green, sort of like a lime green cardigan, and then like a lime green sort of crop top with like little ties on it and in the center. And I have my long hair, unfortunately covering most of the outfit because it's been a pandemic. It's been hard to cut it. And yeah, and I'm smiling very happily with my arms out. And the reason I chose this, I could have chosen like an outfit that I've worked on in the past, which is definitely probably considered more adaptive, but the reason I chose this was because it's my everyday go-to outfit. That's, sorry if you're hearing messages coming through, some of the family chat is popping off. But I wear it every day and it's accessible to me, but I also consider it sort of my version of slow fashion. I brought this outfit when I was very much unemployed, had very little income. And so all of it is unfortunately fast fashion, except from the fanny pack. But I've kept it since about 2016. And what I've done is I've just kept adding things to it or adjusting it in different ways. So like adding elastic to the waist, or reselling the shoes, and or like restitching the cardigan, which has so many holes in the armpit that somehow I've hidden. But it's accessible to me because the crop top helps my nerve pain on my back, which gets very irritable. And the elastic helps my bloated and like paralyzed bowels area. So it's not as painful and doesn't dig in as much. The looseness stops any sort of pressurized pain on my legs. The combat boots give me support around my ankles, and also a bit of protection when my feet give way a little bit. And then also the cardigan is just so easy to throw on. But I also share a lot of this outfit with my siblings when they're home. So it's not just me getting use out of this outfit, it's my sister's wearing the t-shirts too, and the cardigan. It's a very communal approach, which I've sort of grown up with, having two sisters. And yeah, I just wanted to share, I thought it was a more realistic version of like what actually that would look like to me as a disabled chronically ill woman. Just trying to make her fashion choices a bit more intentional and but stylish at the same time. I'm gonna mute that chat, oh my gosh. But yeah, thank you.
Amazing. I love the range of kind of fashion that's shown there, from kind of catwalk to everyday to kind of almost like a kind of sort of high fashions. I love the range there of kind of, you know, all this kind of fashion can be accessible and sustainable, and I love the thought and history and family connections that are in all of those outfits. So my next question is, so yeah, I know secondhand clothes and charity shops and clothes swaps are often kind of popular around people who talk about sustainable fashion. And I was wondering, you know, your thoughts on, can these kinds of avenues for clothes work for disabled people, and what needs to be done to make these more accessible? And I'm just gonna try and pin you all because when I dropped out it changed it, but please someone jump in to who the first one who wants to have a shot at answering that question.
I'm happy to start if that's
Please,
okay.
yeah.
I think kind of secondhand shopping and charity shopping can be really accessible in terms of finding different items, and like Poppy said, the clothing isn't necessarily made to be adaptive, but actually because it's got an elasticated waist or it's a tie front, it can really work. So you can really find those gems. The thing that I think needs to change is like the physical accessibility of it. So charity shops are probably known for being the worst places for accessibility in terms of if you're a wheelchair user, especially. They're so tight, and there's often just stuff everywhere. So that is definitely something that could change to make things more accessible. We are, I think, probably all aware that a lot of shops also have steps into them. So again, that creates a huge barrier, because if it has a step, a lot of people then just can't access that at all. But we do have online platforms now, so things like Depop, eBay, Instagram, there are pre-loved sellers. So it's becoming more accessible, but there's definitely still work to do. But again, like Poppy mentioned, when you're on a low income, secondhand shopping is a really good option because you can find really nice things. You just have to do a little bit more looking. You need to have the time for a bit of search.
Poppy.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think the thing I find really hard is the energy side of it. When you have only a certain amount of energy in the day, and it's already hard enough to like cook and clean and just get out of bed, the idea of then going to a place and then looking through that place for just one gem that hopefully will be there is really, really hard. And I mean, I like things where they have that version online and like in stores that you can look in advance with really, really good descriptions. I think that's one thing like eBay and in general sellers, if you're an eBay seller, could do better, is having those descriptions and like having the exact dimensions of the garment, or like what fastenings does it have? Because so many times I've zoomed in on an image and been like, is that Velcro? Like, is that a zip or is it a fake zip? But just more descriptions, especially online, would be so helpful. I don't know if any of you agree with me, but
Looks like lots of nods.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I second both of those comments. Descriptions are atrocious from a lot of sellers. You quite often will get a black skirt. Great, guys. And it's left to your imagination. But one thing I find is a lot in the disabled community, they don't have the skills or the ability to do the adaptions that they need. So even if they find these gems that are in these shops, then they don't always have the ability, or their family don't have the ability to make the adaptions and make them usable. And I think a lot of times, if you're wanting to make them adaptive, you need to go up 2 or 3 sizes. Well, if you're a wheelchair user anyway, this is me speaking from experience, so I don't want to speak for every wheelchair user, but I am an 18-20 already from sitting in a wheelchair. I haven't got that range to go up to bigger sizes so that I can then adapt them to bring them down to what I need. So there's a huge disparity between what is available in smaller sizes and what is available in larger sizes. But having that ability to be able to make the amendments that you need to a garment, and getting a seamstress is expensive, and there's not a lot of them around. It's not the sort of adjustments that you could go to a normal seamstress and say, I need to make this adaptive, I need to add this. They wouldn't know how to do that. And that's a huge shame, because it's that sort of skill that we should be teaching. Kids should be leaving university knowing how to design adaptive, to make adaptive, to alter to be adaptive.
I think that's a really good point that leads on to one of our later questions. So I had on my list a bit further down to ask about repairing clothes or upcycling them instead of throwing them away. And I was really interested to hear how you think that kind of repair work or upcycling or adapting can be made more accessible for disabled people. I wonder if there's any thoughts you have, Kat, on like what can be done to make this work more easily available and affordable.
I think it would need to take a countrywide approach. I know there's conversations happening amongst quite a few adaptive designers about maybe putting a network together of seamstresses who understand disability or are even disabled themselves, because being disabled, your job opportunities are quite limited. But maybe we could get a group of disabled people together who can sew and who cover a geographic area, and we could bring our things to them and they could adapt them for us. So I know there's conversations going on about that. I love what Open Style Lab do, huge advocate of them for their adaptive kits. I just wish we had them in the UK too. Not Poppy's fault, but I think we need them in the UK because it would be really handy. But I think we need to shout about it. There is a lot of shouting going on, but I think we are a little voice in a big pond, and we just need to help disabled people understand that they don't have to sit in clothes that are uncomfortable and that are not functionable and don't work for their bodies. There are amendments that we can do and tweaks that we can make to make sure that they are comfortable and they're suitable.
Poppy.
Yeah, no, I thank you. Thank you for your kind words. Honestly, we're working on it. I promise it's happening, but it's just very slow being such a small group of people. Most of us being disabled, you know how it is. But I wanted to just mention particularly that accessible clothing is a human right. The clothing participation gap is a real thing, where that means that disabled people are literally held back from social life, work life, purely because of clothing. And it impacts about 2 out of 3 disabled people in various ways, some severely, some in little ways where it's just particularly annoying. And I think I'm probably more on the end of that spectrum, but it's enough that you have to think about it daily. And that's exhausting, having just to think about another thing when you already have like society very much against you in many ways. And I agree, teaching disabled people in particular how to adapt their clothing, how to hack their clothing, and that they can do it. Like, we're allowed to do that. You can change your clothing to your needs, but it very much does need like a bigger, wider approach. I completely agree with Kat, because at the moment it's very much our small bubble talking about it, and we need to just keep pushing and trying and punching our way out of it in the least aggressive way.
I mean, have any of you, I mean, how much crossover is around their work with like sustainability stuff? Because I just know just from kind of our work we've been doing that's not, you know, necessarily fashion related, that there's so much kind of money around kind of green things right now, and you know, all these kinds of repair shops and that kind of stuff. And I was wondering, is that a kind of way to make that small bubble kind of reach a few more people or get a bit more money? Because it does seem, unfortunately, I find in my experience, you know, a lot of people kind of aren't unfortunately interested in disability issues, but more people do seem to be interested in climate issues. And then when I reframe disability issues as climate ones, they start to pay attention.
Yeah, definitely. I think you mentioned anything with disability and people switch off. And so a lot of it is how you reframe it and how you talk about it. And yet it's the disabled community who are impacted most by climate issues and sustainability issues. And I think there's a lot of work that still needs to be done, but I really think so. Things like luxury brands who we know either send to landfill or burn, those clothes could be given to disabled designers. We could adapt them to become outfits that both the user and the company could be really proud of, and yet it's not done, and it's frowned upon. And yet if you think 1 in 5 in the UK and 1 in 4 in the US are disabled, it's not a niche, it's not little. So we could be opening up their company to a lot more income and a lot more eyes, but it's all about how do we reframe it. And And there's a lot of conversations going on within the disabled community and outside, just to know what the magic phrase is, why it's not getting picked up, and why we cannot get companies on board to talk about disabled issues. But I'm hopeful, because sustainability has all of a sudden become a thing, and I'm really hopeful that the way that clicked, so will the disabled framework, and be able to bring fashion into a much more sustainable and slower turnaround. I mean, fast fashion is just appalling.
I'm really sorry. Can I jump in?
Sorry?
Can I separately say something about how can they keep non-disabled people talk about disabled issues?
Sure. I think it'd be great if we could mostly have the panelists speaking for this part, but if you want to quickly say something, then we can discuss with everyone a bit more later. But yeah, go for it.
And sorry, I'm just talking about ear for like I think I agree completely with what Kat's saying, and I'm actually friends with Kat. So hey, that I think what it is about disabled issues being not seen as added extra, but finding a way to make it normal in the fact that fashion is impact everyone, including disabled people. I think what we need to do is normalize the issue so people can understand it. And I think the way we do that is just by being visible on social media. Social media, I believe, is the powerful tool we have as disabled people to get out there. Because you cannot hide from disabled people on social media, because we are out there, we are active. That we need to make sure that we have the tools to make sure that disabled experience is not seen as a negative problem, so we go down in what's the word? Sorry. But I also think another great way that disabled people have an impact is should in TV, in media, on Facebook, Instagram, social media, like that, but also in a place. There's a lot of events out there that are slowly but surely including disabled people, and that real life experience help people realize that, hello, we are not scary. I think those two things, very slow, very hard, but I think that's one way of taking our issues out there. So also I will say Rosie Jones, a comedian with those authorities, did something really interesting with a 24-hour telethon.
That's
was
really good point.
interesting.
Thanks for that. I think if I'd love to maybe give a bit more time to our panelists, and then we can come back to discussing these really important points later. And I know that certainly I've been it meant a lot to me seeing a woman with an arm like me on the latest version of Sewing Bee. So yeah, really important points. I wonder if Chaimah, did you have anything you wanted to add on this issue?
Yeah, I mean, similar to what Courtney was just saying, I think that's something that will hopefully make an impact, is showing more disabled people on TV and in the media, because while we have social media, I think you're only going to follow disabled people if they have something to say that relates to you. And if you're not disabled, that doesn't necessarily relate to you, so you might not do it. Whereas if it's on TV, it's it's there for us to witness. We don't really necessarily get a choice to see them or not to, in a good way. It means that we're exposed to it. I know that there's a statistic I saw recently, and I'm sure it was less than 1% of people on TV are disabled. And like Kat said, given that like 1 in 5 people, 1 in 4 people are disabled, that's a huge disparity. And I think that, like Courtney was saying, is a barrier, because if I don't ever see disabled people, when I do see them, I'm going to feel a bit uncomfortable. I'm maybe going to stare. I'm going to think all these things and maybe pity them. Whereas if I see them in my day-to-day life, on TV and in person, it just normalizes it. So it makes these issues easier to speak about, and it makes them more accessible to the people that can make a difference. So I agree with Courtney. I think it needs to be TV. I think people need to be on billboards. We need to see it on advertisements, front of magazines, everywhere.
Brilliant. I think that's a good lead on to my next question of I'd like to hear who your disabled fashion icons are. Like who should be up on those billboards in your opinion? Should we start with Kat?
So I really struggle with this one because there isn't one person that jumps out. And I think it feeds into what Chaimah says, because we see so little of them, we don't actually know they're out there. So it's not an image that sticks in our head. But 2 people that I really love seeing on TV and you do hear about. So one of them is Sandy Roberts. She is a disabled model. You will see her on This Morning. She also models, so she's with Chaimah, if that's the right, I don't know if that's the right way of saying it. But she wears everyday clothes and she's a wheelchair user. And what she's really good at is she will give you a rundown of what she's wearing, and she'll tell you if they work for you or for her. And if they do and if they don't, and it's completely impartial. She's not paid for any of it. This is just her personal feedback. But that's really beneficial because as a wheelchair user, clothing fits so differently. And I just love the passion that she's got for it. And another one would be Sian Lord, who has got a prosthetic leg, and she's got the funkiest leg I've ever seen because she wears it loud and proud. She has it glittered, she has it sparkled, she's got it with a Louis Vuitton cover, and but she's doing what these big brands aren't. She took a handbag, and she covered her own prosthetic leg in it. And it's like, these brands are missing a huge market, because can you just imagine the buzz and the stir of seeing someone walk down the street and they've got a Louis Vuitton leg? You know how people turn when they see high fashion handbags. It's just another way of normalizing disability. So there are 2 people that I love following on Instagram, and I think they're making big waves.
Beautiful. Poppy, do you want to go next?
Yeah, like Kat said, that's a really hard question, because I think also I've only really been exposed to maybe disabled people that look like me, and that in itself is a bias. So like I love like Nina Tame, I love Lucy Dore, I can never say her surname, but we love her Neo Walking Sticks, and Imani Barbarin, who also I admire, and I just love how she has such bright colorful fashion. At a fashion show recently, she wore like bright blue eyeshadow with matches with like her dress and her crutches, and I was like, fantastic. But in regards to the question of like who do you want to see more in like fashion advertisements and billboards, I want to see sort of breaking the stereotype of that like disability is just this white appearance, and I really want more BIPOC people, and you wouldn't think, oh, they don't look disabled. Like I want to break away from that unfortunately white image of the disability that we currently have, because we're very palatable, I think, and I think we need to break that down. So yeah.
Great, yeah, represent the full diversity of disabled people. Chaimah.
Yeah, I think I was going to say something similar to Poppy, that I think although we see like less than 1% of disabled people on TV and things like that, when we do, they're quite often white, and they're quite often conventionally beautiful. So it would be lovely to see people that don't fall into that. So people of colour. I'm really passionate about short stature people. So for me, that'd be people like Monique. I think her Instagram name is like Monique Dior. She works for ZBD, and she is a person of colour. She's also a wheelchair user, and she's short stature. So for me, she would be great because she kind of covers a lot of bases, and in terms of representation, and a lot of people can see themselves in her. But I agree with Poppy. I think it needs to be less whitewashed, although we don't see enough of them anyway. I think to diversify that so that people of colour also see themselves in these people as well, and that's a whole nother issue, but it's a really small, it's not even a small intersection, but it's an intersection that's not thought about enough. So I agree, they need to be shown more.
Great, and lots of great recommendations of Instagram people to follow. So if anybody wants to be dropping them into the chat, I'm really looking forward to looking up all these people later. All right, I'm going to go on to my next question. I think we've probably touched on some of this in some of the other questions, but yeah, I was going to say, so sometimes fashion that is sustainable or adaptable can be a bit more expensive than other fashion, and when disabled people are already under a lot of other financial pressures. Do you have any ideas on what can be done to make this fashion more affordable and accessible for everyone? Should we start with Poppy this time?
It's such a big question because obviously I've been there where I love fashion, but I couldn't afford any more than Primark. So I know how hard it is. Just that's, you know, the £5 range is what you're looking for. But for me, it's all about like approaching it with longevity and slow-minded, and how can I make this last in the long run? Like I will invest in things now that maybe are cheap. Obviously I have an income now, but I still approach with that mindset of how long will this last? Can I wear this for years to come? Unfortunately, disabilities change over time. Like my disabilities, I have different needs that pop up over the years. Like I just had to buy a bunch of like Birkenstocks because I had some surgery on my feet, which was completely like didn't see that coming at all. And then I had my nerve pain on my back, which I didn't see coming at all. To buy loads of crop tops. So it's really hard to keep up with like that demand of like changing disabilities. So buying to last doesn't always work. And I really like the approach like circular fashion, like taking the holistic approach of looking at how it's made, the process of it, and then also the end of life. Can it be biodegradable? And I really wish that could be applied more to like adaptive fashion in general as well. But yeah, it's really hard. I just stick to eBay most of the time because it's secondhand. Sometimes it's the best you can do, even though it's very hard. So is there anyone else wants to chip in on that?
Yeah, I'm happy to chip in. I was talking about this earlier about the cost of what I sell in particular, and I would love to be more affordable for the people that struggle. And as we know, disabled people already have extra expenses. They also find it difficult to get employed and to even go to job interviews without clothes. It's kind of this vicious cycle. But I believe in creating things as sustainable as I can. So that means more expensive fabrics, more expensive fastenings, more expensive production. I produce everything in the UK by a team of women. They're all paid living wage, I think above living wage. So that makes it really tough because you've got the moral side of things. Of I couldn't physically live with myself knowing I was producing in China or Bangladesh where these like atrocities happen. I just couldn't do it because I wouldn't be able to sleep at night. So there's a real struggle, and there is the disparity between people who can't afford fashion and they need adaptive fashion to people that are trying to make it as accessible as it can be. I think the way that I would be able to bring my price down is to have investment. If someone invested in me and I could buy bigger quantities and I could make things on a larger quantity, that would bring the price down. But it's finding people that believe in it to invest in it. So again, it's almost a bit of a vicious cycle, because you have to prove these things. And I'm going to have to one day stand in a boardroom pitching my idea to some investors and hope that they believe in the need for it, and hope that they believe in it, and that they see that there's real need for it. But it is tough, and like Poppy said, it's really hard, because disabled people are on less income a lot of the time. They're not always. There are some people that do have income, and there's room for them to have more luxury fashion as well. So we need to just diversify. At the minute, I think all adaptive fashion is expensive by a lot of people's kind of books, but there are people that can afford that. I guess it's like the fashion industry now. You've got Primark, you've got the kind of middle range of things like Reiss and other stories. Then you've got the luxury brands like Dior, Chanel, Burberry. We need that in the adaptive fashion industry to cater to more people. It's just, I think the investment in it needs to be had so that we can actually develop that.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that. Investment is sorely lacking in any disabled entrepreneur's life, because you mentioned that your brand is for disability or for adaptation, and all of a sudden it's a risk, despite the fact that there's been research done until, well, more than I've had hot dinners, to tell us that there is a market, to tell us that there is a need, to tell us that we must do better, but no one actually does anything about it. Despite the fact that there are grassroots companies out there that are trying really hard. Adaptive fashion is expensive at the moment because we have to make it one order at a time, one person at a time. But like Chaimah said, should we get investment, we could then have a factory, we could then produce in larger amounts, we could then bring the price point down. And we're not looking to bring it down to fast fashion prices. I think all of society have been conned into believing that cheap is sustainable. Actually, they're all in for a hang of a shock when they realize that sustainability is going to cost them money, and they're going to pay for it, because fast fashion is not sustainable. And at some point the whole system will crack, and they will have to start paying more for their clothing. So I think a lot of it is mindset. We are going to have to get into the mindset that slow fashion costs more because it's going to last longer. There is this disparity, like Poppy said, conditions change. So within adaptive fashion, there isn't a panacea where we can just block cut one pattern and it's going to last you for the whole of your life. Unfortunately, we're always going to have that juxtapoint of, if a condition changes, we're going to have to buy new clothes. But if we got in more investment, then price points would come down, and then it would become more sustainable and more affordable. And it is that vicious circle of we just need one company to take the risk, to put the investment in and see a return, because it is possible, it's doable. There's been plenty of proof out there. We just need someone to go, you know what, we're going to take a punt and we're going to go for it.
Poppy.
No, I just want to expand on that because I completely agree. I think it's also just an investment for society in general, being an aging population, going through multiple pandemics, and there's more disabled people now than ever, and investing in it now and solving the issue now rather than later, when it will be so much harder to solve and so much more suffering and needless suffering. It's just so important. Like, it's getting ahead of the game, and it's so frustrating that others can't see it in that particular way. And yeah, I just wanted to add that because, yeah, so frustrating.
Yeah, Sounds like, yeah, it's a incredibly frustrating issue, but I guess as you're saying, there's so much opportunity there. If someone just takes a punt on it, like a lot could change. All right, I'm gonna finish the panel section with one last question. So what work in adaptive or sustainable fashion is inspiring you right now? If we end on a bit more of a positive note. Should we start with Chaimah?
Yeah, I think it's lovely to see that more is happening, and people are being represented. I think I'm really excited to see Victoria from Unhidden, who I'm sure Kat will probably mention as well, and I'm sure Poppy probably would, as we're all friends with her and we all love her, because I know how hard she works, and she's finally, I think, getting the recognition. And it's lovely to be friends with people in the adaptive industry, because I say to people all the time, the fashion industry is really cutthroat and it's not very nice, and it's a really long slog to go into that work. But the adaptive industry is completely different. We're all friends. There's no horrible competition where we're throwing each other under the bus. So I'm just excited to see us all grow, I think. But yeah, I'm excited to see Victoria's new line, because I think she's been given some opportunities that will be really exciting for her and the rest of us, because if she can do it, it means the rest of us can do it.
Beautiful. Poppy.
Yeah, I was gonna add, I think we definitely have this approach. Oh my gosh, I did take my inhaler today. We have this approach, I think, of if one of us win, we all win. And it's so freaking cool, honestly, because I think it's so different to what the actual fashion industry is like. But for me, I don't wish to toot my own horn because it's not me who made these garments. I'm purely just the communication person. But the garments we made for New York Fashion Week, they were made in collaboration with disabled people, not for, but with. And that's so important. I think a lot of adaptive fashion outside of the disabled community is made for us without really us in mind or us collaborating with them. And I think I'm seeing that a lot more now in so many like collections, and ours is like not for profit, obviously, but working with disabled people. And some of the garments we created a little dress for this cute little girl, where this dress would expand with her over the next few years. She has SMA. And it's just things like that to make life easier. It's one less thing to think about. Now her mum hasn't got to think about, oh, we have to go to this wedding, like 2 years later, oh wait, she can wear that dress. And yeah, I'm just so excited to see what's going to happen in Bloom over the next few years. And so proud as well. I've almost cried so much over the last fashion weeks we've had, because it's just been such a wonderful time in celebration of adaptive fashion.
Wow, yeah, really inspiring stuff. Kat.
Yeah, there's been tears. There's been tears. So I was privileged enough to be able to collaborate with OSL, and I met the designers before they did the amazing fashion show and came up with it. I cried at Chaimah's because it was just beautiful and inspiring, and yeah. There is so much good going on. Victoria Jenkins from Unhidden she's almost at the cusp. She's where everyone's like holding their breath, because it feels exactly like if she can do it and people start believing that it can be done, the floodgates are going to be opened. And it is such a friendly environment to be in, to be an adaptive designer. It's lovely. But another company that just launched at the weekend as well is called Differently Enabled. And it was their first fashion show in the evening after Chaimah. And what they are bringing into adaptive fashion is just spectacular. Again, it's someone with lived experience. He was a model, then he got COVID, and he ended up on life support and got really, really poorly. And all of a sudden, his clothes didn't work for him. But he has this passion for bringing out fashion that is adapted, but it's bright and it's joyful, and adaptive fashion doesn't have to be mundane and boring. People think disability and they think like grandmas and granddads and pajamas and joggy bottoms, and there's a huge raft of us out there screaming and shouting and going, no, we want pattern, we want colour. People are going to look, so let's give them something to look at, and we're going to be loud and we're going to be proud. And differently enabled was just like a light bulb moment for me, because they're doing that and they're loud and they're proud. So they're definitely a one to watch.
Wow, it's really inspiring hearing everything that's happening and what a beautiful community it is. It's something I love about these small communities that pop up around the kind of work that we're doing with disabled people, because even though we can means sometimes things a bit smaller, it means that everyone's just really friendly and looking to support each other. But I think that's a really good note to open up to the audience on. So if you have any questions, if you could put up a hand, or probably better if you put up the Zoom function hand, because I've got a lot of people pinned, so I won't necessarily see it. But yeah, if you have any questions, or if you want to share some of your own experiences, or I know there's always so much wisdom in the room when we have these things. So Caroline.
Hi, sorry, I was muted. I think I went back to 2020 and left my mute camera off. First of all, thank you to all the panelists. It's been really informative. I do have a question. So I actually work for an ethical and sustainable children's wear brand, and we are creating an adaptive range for children from 0 to 8 years old. It's in progress at the moment, and we've got focus groups who are trying the samples. But I really wanted to ask anybody here that had a disability, as a child, what is the one thing in clothing that you felt you missed out on, just to help us with our research, really, if that's okay to ask.
So I can't help you with that, because unfortunately I wasn't born with my disability. I was made disabled 15 years ago. But one thing that I would put into your research is, when you're thinking about children, think about bigger sizes. So one of the biggest things that we've come across is that children with sensory issues or children with autism, they are actually in adult size clothing, but they still want the kids' patterns. They still want SpongeBob, they still want all of that. So actually don't constrain your thoughts to an age range or a size range. Try and think about kids that are kids but trapped in adults' bodies, because you'll find a lot of those, they'll lap your brand up.
Yes, I wanted to add, I'm neurodivergent, I have ADHD, and I'm also autistic. Also chronically ill from a young age, so I struggle with dressing, a lot of co-dressing with my mum, being too fatigued, lots of pain. General fasteners, but I feel like that's the standard now for adaptive fashion. But sensory issues was a huge one. I really struggle with trousers and especially jeans. I still can't wear jeans. I find it really hard. I'd love to be able to wear them, but I just can't figure out a reality yet where they would be comfortable for me, because I just don't know what that would look like. And as a young one, I think I struggle with sizing as well. Like Kat said, I sized up a lot because of sensory needs, and like just things now seem to fit me either for some reason as well. I'm being too tight. Yeah, so trousers, elastic, all elastic, but also obviously collaborating with kids who are disabled, who are neurodivergent, physically disabled, would be also crucial in that too.
Thank you both. And yeah, we are thinking of doing, instead of ages, of doing measurements instead, because yeah, that would be a bit easier for people to figure out.
Can I just be cheeky and ask, have you got an adaptive designer on board with you?
No, that's I think one of the things that's how I wanted to join on this. We're working with a charity called Purple,
Yes,
or
I'm a purple ambassador.
Oh, brilliant. Okay, great. And they've been amazing, and they've really helped us get our focus group. And we've not got it on our website yet because we really want to get the feedback and get it right. So we think we'll be a couple of back and forth. We didn't just want to go for it. But we just felt that, well, actually, I wrote down a quote. I think it was Poppy that said, because we are a sustainable brand, and Poppy said clothes can't be sustainable if it's not accessible, and that's how we feel. So we really wanted to start this process. But because our designer isn't disabled, we were concerned that we might make mistakes, but we didn't want that to be a reason not to go for it. And I think any movement is positive movement, and I'm sure we will get feedback, and hopefully it's constructive. And I know we can't fit every.
I'm happy to share my details with you, and Open Style Lab, I'm sure, would collaborate in some way.
Absolutely. We just worked with some kids with our show, and I think making the garments grow with them in like making them functional throughout the years was really important. Especially as an autistic kid, I grew very attached to certain clothing, and growing out of it was almost traumatic. So that would be really cool too.
Yeah, that would be amazing. I'd love to try and connect with you somehow so we can talk about that, because you gave me a bit of an idea. So we do a lot of blogs on how to fix things, make them last longer. And actually, when you said about learning adaptive designs, I think that'd be amazing to actually do some work on that too. So thank you.
Not a problem.
No, sorry to have taken over for so long.
Ruth.
Hello. Yeah, I was going to ask about if people are using any sort of digital tools for making clothes. I've been going to a makerspace recently and quite enjoying and wondering all the possibilities you can do with like laser cutting and things with fabric, which is not my area. I make stuff out of other things, not really clothes and fabric. And I also was learning about like 3D knitting machines and things like this, and then how things can be shaped, and imagining how at the moment I'm having a lot of hip pain, and it's really affecting like wearing trousers, and like I wore leggings yesterday and I thought I could manage it, and it wasn't really as manageable as I thought. And like sort of thinking, oh, you know, like, is there ways to sort of, you know, maybe make things that can like be like, I don't like elastic, like I prefer to not have anything pushing on my stomach at all. So sometimes I take elastic out of like jumpsuit waistbands or dress waistbands, but like making it easier to do those sort of things. And so I have two sort of questions, I guess, really. One about like, how can we make it so that it's easier to take the elastic out or remove things, or remove little metal things on the pocket that irritate, you know. And the other one is about like any use of sort of cool digital design things, just so I can be a bit geeky out about it.
I'm happy to start on this one, if no one minds. So I've just come out of uni at London College of Fashion, where they teach you about these 3D design platforms, and you get these virtual avatars that you get to design on, and you get a custom pattern to the measurements you put in, which is amazing, but that's only for a standing average height model. So if you're not standing and you're not average height, it doesn't work. So, and it's also, lots of people don't know this, it's a more sustainable way to work, because you do all of the sampling online. So there's no fabric waste, it's less time consuming. So for me, that's a real barrier in my business, because I can't use it, because there aren't any short stature models. And if you look for avatars that have dwarfism, you'll get like a troll come up, like a dwarf troll, and that's all you get. They apparently cannot do seated avatars, because for some reason it doesn't work. It creates holes where the person's seated. Don't understand how that works, because if we have Wi-Fi and we can call people across the world, how can we not have a body scan of someone seated? I'm not sure yet. But it's something that I think probably lots of us are working on, and I'm in touch with the University of Bournemouth about this, because they do 3D body scanning, and I'm going to try and work with them to find a way. So not necessarily the most positive news to come out from me, sorry, but I'm really passionate about the kind of the 3D stuff and new tech that's coming out, because it is more sustainable, because you don't have to do all the samples. There's a lot less waste, but it's not made for disabled people yet. There probably is things like the laser cutter, I'm sure, can probably do some things, but it's tough and it's not really accessible just yet.
Poppy.
I just wanted to mention about 3D printing. So the tools we make to then be able to hack your clothing, it's like seam rippers and needle threaders that are adaptive or just a bit easier to use than the bog standard. I use those a lot to take things off all the time. So it's like mixing your two questions there together. Yeah, 3D printing is massive in what we do. I think we rely on it a lot because it's so customizable. Obviously, it takes a lot of time and planning, and I don't know a lot about it, but luckily my team do. So that's really, I think, quite a pillar at the moment, maybe in the future of accessible fashion. I think we're going to be relying on design like that a lot more because of the freedom that comes with it. But also I wanted to mention like the future of VR and meta. I know I hate it too, but I think there's a lot to be said with games and online fashion where you can customize your avatar. Obviously the avatars aren't very inclusive by any means at the moment, but I think it's a really good way of expression without really harming the environment with like garments and playing around with looks and styles and design. And I think I do that myself on VR, and like Animal Crossing was a huge one for me. I was obsessed with that when that came out and all the fashion and that. So that sort of fulfilled that sort of need to have clothing and self-expression in my brain without buying the clothing. So yeah.
Yeah, so I use what do I use? What's it called? A program, that's it, called Fittingly Sewing 2, which is it's how I get my blocks for making clothes. The only issue I've come across, and I am in talks with a developer, is so for example, working on Isaac, I can't give them arm measurements and I can't put a 0 in. It just completely corrupts the file, and it goes, we can't work because everyone has arms and everyone has legs. And it's like, no. I imagine it's not that difficult to fix, but that's me coming from a non-techie world saying I don't think it's a difficult fix. To me, it would be an algorithm thing, but I don't know. So I am in communication with them. But what I like about it is it means that I can draw blocks up, I can draw it up on a computer, and I don't have to be making trials and making samples just to see if it fits people, which is really a lot more sustainable. From a 3D printing, I don't know, have you ever tried any folded fabrics? Because I was watching making the cut, and there was the lady on there who came third. Her name's completely gone, is an English lady, but all of her designs were pleated and folded, and she made clothes that were multi-size. So a size 6 could wear it, a size 18. And the freedom, it sounds very similar to what Poppy was describing for the children's clothes. The freedom of movement was given out of pleat because it was the way it was pleated, and it's in all sorts of amazing geometric shapes. So you've got that fashion element, but you've also got the usability of it being able to move and stretch should you need it to, without the need of having elastics.
Great. I noticed we got a couple of comments in the chat. Tracy's talking about their son Neo, who is very sensory of clothes, and finding now can't get him the character clothing that he wants. Nicola's very excited about to be starting a life-changing experience with Chaimah to get a wardrobe of pieces that look good and fit them properly. I'd love to hear more about that if you'd be happy to tell us a bit about it. Courtney,
Can I jump in on the, sorry, I was just going to jump in on the character one. So I am aware, and it's not a secret because I'm sure she's had it on her Instagram. Chaimah, just tell me to shut up if I need to. Victoria Jenkins is bringing a kids range out, which has got Paw Patrol and SpongeBob SquarePants. So she's got the licensing rights for those. So she will be bringing out kids of varying sizes and varying adaptive fixes. I don't think she's got a release date yet off the top of my head, but she is in touch with licensees, so it might be that if these are successful, then that could open the way for other adaptive ranges, but it will be the first adaptive designer that has got a kids range with prints.
Can I just add, Tracy is my mum, so mum's always updated about anything that anyone's doing, and I know mum mentioned the other day that Neo's new thing is Paw Patrol, so that's handy because he's autistic, he kind of changes. He'll have phases, so he went through a phase of loving Frozen, and then it was, oh, what's that new, there was a Disney film, they're like, is it Spanish maybe?
Mhm.
Ruka?
Do you know what it is, mum?
Encanto.
Yeah, and he loved that, he sung all the songs,
Yeah.
and then Patrol, so that's handy.
Yeah, but the thing we struggle, he wants pajamas, but he can only really get girls, and he's not fussed being autistic. He don't care if it's girls or boys. It's the age, they stop at like age 8, and he's quite a big lad. He needs to be up inside.
What I was mentioning earlier. So my son is 15, but he's 6'5".
Yeah.
But actually he's only a 5-year-old. So we still like Paw Patrol, and we still like Thomas the Tank Engine.
Yeah.
But I can't buy him any adult clothes with any of those characters on.
Yeah.
And he's not interested in adult clothes because he's a 5-year-old really, but trapped in an adult's body.
Yeah.
And he's lovely. I've met him at the Disability Festival. He's so sweet. He is so sweet. We just need some good clothes for him.
Yeah. The other thing I mentioned was jeans. We tried jeans on Neo, but his hips must sit differently because they just don't fit right on his upper thigh and on his hips. He can't wear them. You can't even pull them up properly on him.
I think it's because he's a tiptoe walker. His legs are a different way.
Yeah.
I tiptoe walker, so
Right. Okay. Yeah, and the shoes, we have to look into adaptive shoes now as well because his feet have just completely spread with tiptoeing.
Yeah, it's such a common, I think it could actually be, somebody could bring a range of autistic clothing out and it would fly because they are so regular, those problems that you speak to parents, and it's always tiptoe walkers. There's always they are bigger, but inside this.
Right, okay.
Such a regular thing that I come across.
Hi, I'm really going. Can I just jump in? Have you looked at Church Autumn?
At who? Sorry, Courtney.
So I put in the chat. It's just Autumn. Then that's how you spell it. And I will just check that. But like in Dylan, they autistic clothing brand and that create adaptive clothing for autistic people, and it runs by another other autistic person, and just get the website for you. Sorry, guys.
Don't worry.
That's not. Hang on, sorry, guys. Just there it.
It's okay. I tried looking the website up. but I couldn't find it. Sorry.
I don't think I've done it quite. Hang on.
We can do some Googling after.
I'm trying. I know I've done it on Instagram. I just had done my Instagram for this word that I done.
No worries. It sounds a good idea, and we'll go away and have a look into it.
Oh, hang on. No, it's so annoying. It's a hoodie that is autism friendly, so it lets that all the sensory needs or autistic people. I'm just trying to find it because it's so annoying. Hang on.
I think I've possibly found it. Does the website look like this?
Yeah, there you go.
I'll put the link in the Zoom.
Amazing.
Send
Thank
it
you.
to me, Chaimah.
Yeah, we'll
Sorry, yeah. I don't know if they have done anything else that they are autism friendly. They have a lot of grand ambassadors with autism, so yeah, that's the really grand. Shuriken, have you heard of that? Shuriken, have you guys heard of that?
No,
I haven't.
I'm just looking at the website now.
Shuriken create jewellery, so jewellery that you can chew, that they might have other stuff that would help with this sort of issues as well. So
Oh,
essentially, yeah.
Yeah, I love jewelry. That's so cool. Thank you for sharing.
And
Amazing. Do we? Sorry, wasn't quite sure if I was talking over you.
No, that's fine.
Okay.
I do have a question as well that I can wait for the next one. I'll tell on the question now.
So did you say if you've got another question, you can ask?
Yeah, so my question is going back to what we were talking about earlier. Why do you think disability is so hidden? It seems to be a hidden taboo. And why is that? And what is being done, what can be done to change it?
I think it's because disability is seen as unglamorous, and it's seen as something that is, I don't know another word to put it, but unglamorous in some way. And it's not something that's exciting and fresh to talk about. It's something that seems awkward as well. I think if you're not disabled, it's something that a lot of people struggle to talk about. So I think because it's not seen as glamorous, people don't talk about it because it's kind of the last thing on the list that you could talk about. And I think that's also because there's no representation, so we don't see it. So it's just this hidden thing. It's that vicious cycle of, because it's not seen as glamorous, disabled people aren't seen as statistically beautiful, they're not put on TV. So it's that vicious cycle. If you don't see it, you're not going to talk about it. So I think that needs to change. Disabled people need to be seen as normal so that they can be seen. And we need to recognise actually how many disabled people there are in the world, and that they don't all look the same, and they're not all wheelchair users who are paralysed. Some people are born disabled, some people are made disabled, and they all look so different, and that needs to be shown.
Poppy.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think also.
I said that I had another
Poppy,
question.
could we let the panelists talk, and then I know that Nicola wants to say something as well. So if we let other people have a chance to chat, that'd be great. Thanks.
If you're able to put stuff in the chat, Courtney, then we can talk and hear what you want to say at the same time. What was I going to say? It's so medicalized, I think, throughout time, and the social model, I think, really is like are key out of this. And if we use the pandemic, for example, like in our favor, to try and push the normalization of disability, that it's just a normal part of life. Other cultures have done it before and we can do it again. And I also think that unfortunately capitalism does suppress disability, as we're seen as we don't produce and we're unwanted by society, and changing that narrative and reclaiming it, and also reclaiming disability as an identity, for me personally at least, has been so helpful in my self-esteem and also my output into the world and how I want to also empower others. So I do think we can potentially change it with visibility. I also believe that capitalism isn't like our one way out of this. I think we can play into it a lot to play the game, but it's not the only way. I think things like disability pride we had in July was great, and I'd love to see it more included in other marginalized identities, as disability obviously is the biggest marginalized group that anyone can be a part of any time. So it interacts with every intersection and every marginalized group. So it'd be nice to have more solidarity, I think, from other marginalized groups. And then I think that would get the ball rolling in general. So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think very much you are what you know. And if your life hasn't been touched by disability, if you're fortunate to have not had it in your family, you don't know how to react to it. And if you think the majority of children with disabilities, especially severe disabilities, they go to what we call special schools. So they're taken out of the mainstream. We don't see them, we don't interact with them. So from a very young age, we have created this unconscious bias that disability doesn't really exist and we don't relate to it, which then means we don't. So I became disabled. I used to work in a hospital before. I saw disability every day of my life, but it wasn't in my conscious. It wasn't, I only saw them as sick people. So for me to become disabled and then suddenly this world opens up where they're owning businesses and they're running really successful ventures, and you're like, I had to change my whole mindset, because to me, disabled people only ever sicken in hospital. And I think for a lot of people, that's the same. That if you look in the media, we're normally the villain, the evil person, the ill person. So we're never ever the one that is at the center of the story, doing good and being good and any of that. So a lot of it is how we are perceived in society, is how we are perceived or seen in the media and as we're growing up. So we have got a lot of work to do, but there are a lot of us out there shouting that we are valuable. Please employ us, please use our skills and help us show what we can bring to the table, because we have got some talents that you only learn by being disabled. The resilience, the empathy, the endurance are things that you only learn when you have to fight 1,000 fights before you even got out of bed.
So many important points there, and yeah, just to reiterate what Poppy was saying about capitalism as well, obviously that's a really problematic thing in terms of environmentalism and climate change and stuff, and I think obviously we're going to have huge changes there, and I feel like in a sense so many of the problems around climate change and the problems we have around the disabled people come from the same root, and I think as we're going to have to change things around that just to survive through the kind of climate disaster that comes ahead, I think that's going to create some really interesting changes around the position of disabled people in society. I know that we don't have much time, but Nicola, I think you were going to tell us a little bit about the wardrobe that's going to be created for you.
Don't know if she's gone away, so I'm happy to fill in until she comes back.
Okay.
So I met Nicola maybe a month ago. just for like a discovery call, just to talk about fashion and some of the issues she was having. Oh, there you go. I'll let Nicola chat about it if she's happy to.
Hi, sorry, I completely lost the screen. I don't use the tool very often, and I couldn't find the hand to put the hand up, and then I lost you, but I could only hear you and not see you. So anyway, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, right, okay, good. That was quite scary because I thought, oh, I need to get back to you. Yeah, I was going through, it's a long story, but I was just going through Instagram. I tend to do like a little bit of a Instagram thing before I go to sleep, just check all my messages and stuff. And I came across Chaimah's website, I think it was, on Instagram, and it said for little people, but then I thought, I don't have dwarfism, but I've got a disability. So I just texted her on the off chance that she might be able to help me, because I've got spina bifida and I'm a full-time wheelchair user. And I'm 53, and for the last 53 years, I have suffered with depression in a way from not being able to wear. Not being able to wear the stuff I want to wear. So anyway, I texted her, Chaimah, and just said the situation, and she got back in contact with me. I couldn't believe it. So then we've done a Zoom, and she said yes, she'd help me. So I'm so chuffed, I'm so happy, and just can't wait to do it. And I'm going on holiday tomorrow to Portugal, and it's taken me ages this afternoon to pack, because all the clothes in my wardrobe are mainstream clothes that I've had to get altered, and as much as they might be nice clothes, they don't make me feel good because they're not for me. And I've just worn clothes that are so ill-fitting for so many years, and I just want to flick a switch and get Chaimah into my life and get some lovely clothes in my wardrobe and just feel proud and be able to just go out and just feel good. I mean, I like makeup and I like, fashion, but I didn't realise until I was talking to Chaimah how bad I felt about how I look. I've got loads of clothes, but I keep buying more clothes, and I'm feeling a void in my life. It sounds extreme, but I'm feeling a void in my life because all these clothes don't fit me, so I buy more. Maybe thinking that they might fit better, and then I buy the same thing in the same style because that looked all right, so I buy another one. Then before I know it, I've got 4 different colours of the same top. So I'm taking loads of clothes on holiday tomorrow because none of them make me feel good. And I was saying this to my mum this afternoon, and she said, well, you've got some nice clothes, and I have got some nice clothes, but they don't fit like they should. So I am so excited to see. I just want to, the only problem is Chaimah lives in like the East Coast and I live in the Northeast. And I just want a magic carpet to take me down.
Yeah, but it is exciting. It's sad that you've struggled for so long, and I think it's lovely that you can share that story, because I think other people on the call will share your pain. And I got quite emotional when you were talking about it again then, because it is such an emotional thing. And I have wanted to be a fashion designer forever, and in my head I've always thought that I want to do it to make people feel confident, and I never quite realised until I got into this that the people that need that the most are disabled people. They're the people that struggle the most with confidence, so they're the ones that need it. And I think hopefully this can show people that clothing isn't this vain thing that is just polluting the planet, and it's this really harmful thing, because people need it. People need clothes to feel good and feel comfortable. At a base level, you need to feel comfortable in what you wear, and that should be a human right, to feel comfortable in what you wear. And government should do more to make sure that people don't go kind of through the loop like Nicola has for 53 years not having anything, because look at the effect it has. It's tough, but on the other hand, it's really exciting because I can work with Nicola and make her some fabulous things to make her feel amazing and to discover what her style is. Because like I've chatted with Nicola and with other people of short stature, that because you've never had clothes, you're actually not quite sure what you like and actually what suits you and what's comfortable. And it's a whole nother issue of just not knowing.
I found it very difficult. Sorry.
No, you carry on.
I found it. Chaimah says you said that you couldn't make me anything, and nobody's ever said that to me before. I go into a shop, and I've so got used to looking at boring clothes that cover me up. I've got some nice. I like sparkly, pretty things, and I've got some pretty tops. But I go into shops and I go to what I can wear rather than what I want to wear. And when Chaimah said that to me, that's just been a light bulb moment for me, because I just thought, well, it's not been a light bulb moment, because I don't know what that freedom means. So I'm gonna have to learn I know what I like and what I don't like, but it's such a difficult question. What do you want me to make? Because nobody's ever said that before. And like I said to Chaimah, I said, a pair of jeans, like the lady said earlier, a pair of jeans that fit me. At the moment, I've got these bootleg jeans and I turn them up. So I've got like turn ups. And when I look in the mirror, I look ridiculous. But I've looked ridiculous for so long. And the minute I go out the door now, I'm feeling even worse, because I know it could be a lot better. So I just can't wait to get going.
Yeah.
It's so exciting.
It's a sad circumstance.
Sorry, and this is such a beautiful story. I feel a bit bad about cutting it off. I'm just aware that we're 5 minutes over now, and like we could keep going for hours. This is such a important and inspiring and exciting topic. So I just wanted to finish by saying thank you so much to everyone, to our panelists, for all your amazing work you're doing. And yeah, really excited to hear where you go next, and like all the opportunity that's there. I really hope that it takes off. And thank you so much to everyone in the audience for joining and sharing all your stories and experiences. And yeah, I wish we could keep going forever, but I'm aware that I need to let our BSL translators go with time. But yeah, thank you so much to everyone. And yeah, excited to hear what comes next.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for inviting. I'm dying to see what you create. Fantastic.
I'm going to be a model.
Take care, everybody. Thank you for having me.
Take care all.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye, Kat. Bye, Chaimah.
Nice to meet you
Bye,
all.
Poppy.
And nice to see you again, Kat.
Lovely to see you again, Courtney. Sorry,
I'm not to be Kat, because I want to talk to you about something.
Yeah, that's fine. You just drop me a message.
See you later, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
I'll end the call now, but thanks so much, everyone. Take care. Bye.
See you later.
Bye. Bye.
Half an hour.